Hey everybody, this is Greg Petix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Petixonian Institute of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at an underground from 1981. It might be a little too late for the undergrounds. This is a very late era underground. The undergrounds are pretty much dead at this point. But there was still a few. And this is called Aftershock. It's 44 frenetic pages from the front lines of the sex wars. It's a mostly all-women's compilation of underground comics. And there's some good shit in here. I gotta show you this cover first of all. It's a wraparound. So let's open this up. Why is it so difficult? So I love this thing. I never heard of this woman before, Rebecca Wilson. And this is just some great graphic design awesomeness. And there is like a sci-fi bent to a handful of these stories. So I don't know if it was meant to be all sci-fi, but then some of the contributors were like, I don't want to do sci-fi, so I'm just going to give you what I'm going to give you. But there's definitely some great sci-fi in here, and this cover definitely kind of sets the tone. But yeah, soak that into your eyeballs, people. That's a really nice cover. Yeah, I got to find some more stuff by Rebecca Wilson. She's got the goods. We have this really interesting introduction by this woman, Marion Kester, and it's really neat. It's civilization wants to commit suicide. So what starts to happen is we're made to feel like not reproducing, and she brings up films like Alien and Eraserhead as examples. But then what happens then? Even the sickness attacks sex. Parentheses, love itself. So this is this comic. A lot of the comics in this anthology are kind of about how things are kind of gone awry, and it really seems like this is like 30 years too early. Like, it does seem like that's how it is now, with the internet being so all encompassing, where it's kind of changed sexual relations, I think, between people. And but they're talking about this even back then. There was still something was going on. So yeah, it's a really interesting intro, and it kind of continues over here. So here's the contents page. It has a little strip by Fanny Triddle, I believe her name is. Let me double check on that. I'm sorry, Fanny Tribble. Never heard of her before. It's just a droll little comic strip. But this comic has all the heavy hitters, a lot of heavy hitters from the underground. And we start off with the grande dame of underground comics, Trina Robbins. This is one of her better stories. I kind of like this one. It's a sci-fi story in the future. Basically, people seem to be like so into their jobs and making money that, kind of sex, that the natural inclination to want to have sex is almost like kind of dying out. So this guy's got a beautiful wife and he's good looking, but they never have sex anymore. And the wife is kind of bemoaning it. And this guy's like, yeah, she's right. But, I don't want to have to choose between my career. I love my career, but I want to be a good husband for my partner. So he comes up with this idea. He goes to facsimile clones, a cloning business, and he gets a clone made of himself that is exactly like him, but he's really good in bed. And then he tells his wife over the TV, he's like, I gotta work late tonight, but put the wine on ice. I got a surprise for you. And he gives his clone the keys, and the clone comes in all lovey-dovey. And she wasn't expecting this, so she has a career that she's really into. So she's like, oh, well, I guess my work can wait because, I've been wanting to get laid for a long time. So it starts to become a problem where she's confiding with her friend, like, I was really missing sex, but now it's just too much. I can barely work. And I feel bad that he's taking off time from work because she doesn't know about the clone, And I feel like I kind of have to. So she gets the same idea in her head, and she makes a clone of herself. So the last little bit is both of them are happily working at their careers that they love, and their clones are fucking away happily. And it's a good sci-fi story. It's got all these little touches that are like, like talking about this future world. It's some good stuff. Trina Robbins obviously thought this world through. Next, totally different from that, is Mimi Pond, the longtime National Lampoon cartoonist. And she did some stuff for the Undergrounds too, though. And this is just totally typically great, Mimi Pond. Mimi Pond sounds like a totally cool woman. I wish I knew her. Because from other comics, she always portrays this woman who's like, I don't know, this sardonic, kind of funny, no pretense. She sounds like really cool. So she's just like talking about all these, her friend is having these problems with her boyfriend who sounds like a turd. And she's just like, oh, screw, enough of this. I'm sick of hearing her talk about her boyfriend. This loser guy calls her up and says, we should get together. And she's like, I'm sorry, I gotta pet my cat tonight. But then all of this talk of romance and shit, she's like, I gotta get out. So she puts on her, her hot stretch pants. She goes to a singles bar. A bunch of guys that she's not into hit on her, and she blows them off. But there's this guy she does like, and she totally aggressively goes up to him and, tries to make a play. And this guy's a total dick to her. He's just like, I could give two shits about you. But she's unfazed. And she puts on these sunglasses, these kind of new wavy sunglasses, thinking that she looks all exotic and mysterious. And in her brain, she's got this whole monologue about like, ooh, all the guys are looking at me and they're thinking, what a woman of mystery she is. But actually, the guys across the way are just like making fun of her. They're like, what the hell's her problem? What a weirdo. So it's some pretty funny shit. I like how she's like, she really doesn't care though. She's a kind of cocksure, interesting character. But she figures she'd try it out. Here we get Diane Newman, the great Diane Newman, doing another Dee Glitz story. And Dee Glitz is talking to her friend Loretta, and they go to this singles bar. They want to make some action. And it's in a mall. And her friend instantly hooks up with this like goofy looking guy. She's always on the make. And so Mimi kind of wanders around the mall. She's already a little buzzed. And there's a punk rock bar in the mall. And she sees these punk rockers. And she kind of starts hanging out with them, getting drunk with them, buying them drinks. And she's like, let's go shopping. We're in a fucking mall. And they all do a conga line through the mall. And then we cut back to Loretta, who's back at the bar with her new lover. And she's like, let's walk by that jewelry store. And they see a commotion outside of Macy's. Everyone's looking in the windows. And it's her and her punk rock friends passed out on the mattresses. There's a mattress sale. And Loretta says, Dee sure knows how to have a good time. I don't know why, I just love this stuff. It's so goofy. And it just makes me laugh. This is another artist I never heard of, Petchesky. And I'm pretty sure this person couldn't draw, because this is all collage stuff. But it's very well designed. At least it's very organized, collage work. Really nice lettering. But there's no art in it, as far as I can tell, that she drew. And all it is, it's illustrating this song called The Next Best Thing to Love. It sounds like a typical Torch song type song. So she's just putting little illustrations to it. Whatever. It's kind of interesting. Oh, this is the meat of this issue. I love this shit. Melinda Gebbie does this amazing dystopian science fiction story, New Voids. And we start off with Amended Family Act Protection Act of 1987, which I'll remember that's 6 years in the future here. In order to preserve the family, it is forbidden to employ women. Amendment 19, all females shall be under legal guardianship of the nearest male relative. the Omnibus Morality Act 2003, it is forbidden for married women to engage in sexual intercourse at all. So this is very Handmaid's Tale, before Handmaid's Tale was even conceived. And we got this beautiful Melinda Gebbie art. Of course, every panel that changes, that's how Melinda Gebbie is. She'll draw with this incredible detail, and then she'll just have like a clear line panel, very simplistic. Yeah, this panel's amazing. I love that shit. So there's basically, in this future where women are really downtrodden, there's these three like women who kind of live in the sewers, and they sneak out to get food from the garbage dumpsters, and they're always risking their lives doing that. And they're God, sorry, I love this drawing so much. So they first go to the Phyllis Schlafly Home for Wayward Women, which is basically a fucking whorehouse. Just like in Handmaid's Tale, they supposedly upright more people. Of course, on the down low, all the guys can go and fuck the women who aren't worthy to be married, you know? So this woman is basically training the women like, you know, our lives are dedicated to pleasing the great men we serve. Your clothing should show your greatest assets. So she's basically saying, dress very slutty so you can please these powerful men. And I don't know how these people just keep on, these three women just keep, they can go anywhere, it seems. So, and there's one TV station. The president is, he's called the Reverend President. He's an American elected this preacher, and that's why it's so shitty. So next they go to a mothering center, and it's basically, this is where in the future, all the women are like scientifically impregnated. They'll be, they're impregnated with their own genetically engineered perfect baby. So people are like, hey, can I have a brunette male? And people are asking for genius sperm. Like, how come what if her baby has a genius sperm and I don't? That's not fair. But I think these three comments are kind of weird. What do these Madonnas do for fun? Screw their perfect children? And she's like, yeah, they actually do. They almost always ask for boys. So that's some little scuttlebutt they heard in this perverse, repressed future. So next they go to like the boys' academy, the Christian Academy for Boys. And, you know, of course, they're totally taught to be asexual, abstain from sex. And she says, they look like the moron barnacle choir. And this guy's teaching them he's basically belittling this guy because he's using sissy crayon colors in his art. It's just this horrible, like, patriarchal, you know, misogynist, homophobic society. And so they go back to their sewers, and this guy shows up from the home. He kind of escaped, and he hooks up with them, and he says, hey, you know, I have a computer job. I collect the life history of delinquents. Problem boys get castrated and electroshocked, and they just become vegetable laborers. So, yeah, it's in this world, it's not even good to be a guy either, but it's much worse for women. So he basically erased the computer backgrounds of a bunch of people so they can be under the grid, you know? So a bunch of them kind of team up, and they start eating these moral majority people, pulling them down to the sewers and frying them up for dinner. So that's how they get revenge of this horrible dystopian world. I really like this one. This is Phoebe Glockner, and but it says with Rico Schwartzberg. So I don't know if Rico wrote this, or maybe he drew it, because this doesn't look like a lot of stuff I've seen Phoebe Glockner do. It looks a little more cartoony. But it's this really great story. This woman, she's born into this horrible, tragic life. Her brother kills himself while accidentally playing with a gun. Her mother dies when she's young, 4 months after giving birth to twin daughters. And then, although she's 11 years old, she's undeveloped, she was left to feebly dry nurse the twins. So she was denied a normal adolescence. And so she gets a job when she graduates, and the twins get married, But, love's not in the cards for her. But then when she's 41, she marries an army man. She had known since childhood. But they both knew he had terminal cancer. It was just this sad little marriage. And so, of course, he died pretty soon later. And then she becomes really obsessed with genealogy. And now in 1981, Betty Ann is 51 years old and lives in a tiny house with portraits of all of her departed ancestors. And every night she sits sipping scotch and watching television until she falls asleep. It's just a sad little tale. I really like it, though. Okay, here we got that cover artist, Rebecca Wilson, doing the center spread. And it's not who you sleep with, it's who keeps you awake. And just this couple, well, they're not a couple. I think it's like their first date or something, and they're pals. They're hanging out. They don't even seem to be that into each other, but they're like, well, you've stayed this long. You might as well spend the night. So I love this panel. Obligatory sex scene. And it's just this abstract image. And, as soon as they're done, they're both kind of just like, oh, I wish I could just fall asleep. They're obviously not into each other. So then she wakes up early in the morning, late at night, early in the morning, and she hears that familiar old sound of the clinking of car keys. This guy's trying to sneak out before she wakes up so he doesn't have to face last night's indiscretion. So as her alarm is going off, she has this crazy dream, and this giant wave is kind of crushing the earth. The earth looks like it's splitting up in two. And then the earth opens up and there's a baby inside. So she wakes up from her dream and she's looking in the mirror. I really like this panel. It's almost like her face cracks off and you see this enlightened being within her. But apparently she isn't comfortable with that and she starts gluing her broken outer shell back together. Okay, we got another great science fiction story. This is Sharon Rudall, the great underground cartoonist who did a few science fiction stories and fantasy stories in the underground milieu. But this is really good. This has a lot of great sci-fi touches. Like, there's so many in here. Just like, she really paints this world. It's 2081, Sector Los Angeles. So there's this narrator is talking about this couple, Lev and Elta, and they're like the few terrestrials living in her project, because mostly it was just extraterrestrial immigrants and losers stayed in the front line of the cockroach war, she calls it. And apparently the world's not doing that good, but there's still some civilization. So Lev and Elta aren't like the normal terrestrials, who are basically, it sounds like they're all Richie Riches, who fly down in their flivvers, their flying cars, and eat at the extraterrestrial restaurants for novelty, and then fly back to their sky-high buildings. And but these guys, actually, she works for a living. She's on workfare, they call it, and he just kind of hangs out, and he's a veteran, so he gets some veterans checks. So they're talking about, he's worried about her because her anti-birth ampule is coming loose. Her birth control thing that's kind of surgically implanted in her. And she's like, nobody even gets pregnant anymore. When was the last time you heard of a natural birth? The whole world's so fucked up. The air and water is all nasty. Nobody even gets pregnant anyway, so they have some, they're trying to get cozy with each other. And he's all like, oh, let's wait until you get that new birth control ampule. And, which is kind of stupid because no one's being born. So these people are, totally friends with all the extraterrestrial neighbors. They all hang out. They're hanging out in the park here. And I think I can't remember what panel. Oh, it's later on. Some character says like, E.T. lover, filthy E.T. lover. So, they're, let me see right here, sorry. Oh, I think she's pregnant. And he says, we got to take you to the hospital and have it aborted. And she's like, no, I don't want to. In fact, I'm not even going to go to the hospital. We're going to do it ourselves. We're going to get some old books and read about, giving birth, how they used to do in the old days. So when it comes time for her birth, she's in a lot of pain. It doesn't sound like a good birth. She's bleeding. She's like, oh, my insides are coming out. Get me to the hospital. I was wrong. I need in the hospital. But her baby is, they basically disposed of it. It had a lot of problems, the doctors tell her. And she keeps saying, where's my baby? And they're just like, well, it's gone, And so she's reminiscing about, they have this whole background to this world. Before the majority took over, basically the ruling people, she was a rebel. She was holed up in a burned out commune in Compton, making a last stand against the majority with a capital M. But then they lost and they took her to a re-education camp. And then she came out and she's allowed to be free. And when she tells her husband that everything went dark and closed in around me when they told me the baby was dead, but now I know I'm not afraid to try again. And they agreed to try again. So there's a little hopefulness to the story, but who knows? With all the pollution in the world, it might be another bad pregnancy. Here we got another great Aileen Kaminsky-Crumb comic who calls herself in this one Big Mama Kaminsky-Crumb, because this was drawn when she was pregnant with her first child, or only child, I think. Yeah. And, she's kind of complaining about this stuff that pregnant women talk about, but Aileen Kaminsky-Crumb is a lot funnier. And she starts reminiscing about, how it was 10 years ago when she first moved to San Francisco, when she was a hot young thing, ready to party and having all this fun. She meets Bob Crumb for the first time and kind of talks about how they met and became lovers and then husband and wife. I like how they were married by a judge in a leisure suit. So in this cheesy leisure suit. But at the end, the seething creature in hot pants still lurks in the shadows. So Aileen Kaminsky-Crumb knows that she hasn't changed that much. There's still some of her old self in her. And maybe it'll pop up one day, pop out. This is more Fanny Tribble from the contents page. And these are just kind of like, relationship humor. Not that great, but kind of interesting. We've all been through this shit. We've all had interesting partners that, have different things that drive you crazy. Here's Terry Boyce. She was in Weirdo magazine a bunch of times and some other undergrounds. And she's just doing this little autobio turn about how, when I was younger, I thought I'd be rich and famous, but look at me, kind of a loser. And this is really interesting, though. In her quest for happiness, she turns inward, like kind of Eastern mysticism. She turned outward, and she's praying with a halo, as if she tried Christianity. But then she tries like Primal Scream, all the 70s spiritual fads. Nothing worked. I did not get it. I did not become reborn. And this is interesting because a few years later, Terry Boyce did become a born-again Christian and is really ashamed and does not like her these kind of comics that she drew. I think she burned all of her original art when she became born again. So there's just her saying, like, I just want to be sexy. I'd rather be sexy. And she tries on the sexy lingerie. And of course, like a lot of women, even though she's drawn very hot, I mean, she looks good. But she, being a woman, she's like, oh, I'm becoming an earth mother. I look terrible. Ew, I have hips. Gross. Now this person, Rita Mercedes, I have not heard of her. Something about her looks vaguely familiar, though. It almost reminds me of this union between M.K. Brown and Edgar Gorey. Or is it Edmund Gorey? Like, just the fine line work, the shading on this is so wonderful. But then the faces are all kind of wonky and weird. Kind of like MK Brown characters. And this one, I don't really know what's going on, but it just the way she draws these characters kind of makes me laugh. Like, he says, I'm going to catch you. But she's like, but I'm busy. So she's trying to clean her house, and for some reason, somehow he snuck in his under her table and grabs her ankle, and she just bumps him on the head with her vacuum. I don't know why I think this is so funny. It's so dumb. But just the way she draws. And there's some slapstick humor. He slips on this sponge on the ground. And but then finally, when she's ready to hang out with him, she's like, okay, darling, I'm ready. And it looks like she made him a Jell-O mold. And then he just turns around in his easy chair. I can't even tell really what's going on, to be honest, but it looks like he's shooting a gun at her. It's kind of weird because it's so in the distance. And then he goes back to watching his TV show. So just very nonsensical, quizzical comic, but I really like this shit, and I want to find more by Rita Mercedes. Maybe she's in women's comics or Tits and Clits, I don't know. But these are kind of not that great. They're like basically gag strips by Mary Wilshire. And she did a lot of stuff for National Lampoon. Some undergrounds, not many. But she actually went on to work for Marvel Comics. And she like drew Red Sonja and other like, mainstream comics. But these are all like kind of very like late 70s, early 80s relationship gags, I do like this gag though, where they're looking at this hunk on the beach. And she says, wouldn't you love to get your hands on that one for a night? And she says, sure, if you put a paper bag over his mind. I like that line. I'm going to use that. And, yeah, these are all just kind of like, whatever. Yeah, I'm sure someone might find these funny. But they're very of its time. And then this is kind of interesting. At the last page, though, she kind of stops the comic. All of a sudden, this masked woman appears. And she gets very serious. And she talks about, it's time to fight for what we love. Racial equality, freedom to have an abortion and be gay. Because Ronald Reagan just came into power when this comic came out. And she says, all these things that we treasure, they're in jeopardy. Just look at the eyes of Nancy Reagan. And she even kind of apologizes in a way. Like, if you think this is a lot of corny bullshit, you'd better just check and see when your last period was. Which is, that's kind of sad now. Because now it is against the law to have an abortion. Back then they were just scared it would be taken away. But it would take a while. And I love this one. I don't know why. Florence Sestak. I don't know if she's from Europe, but it's all in French. Just this amazing cartooning, like this, almost like stencil work. And it's this woman like with a trained penis, and she basically, he jumps through a hoop, and the crowd goes wild. Bravo, bravo. I love this shit. Definitely want to find more by her. And that's it for Aftershock, a really nice compilation of great underground cartoonists. 1981. Pretty sure you can get this for cheap. I would look it up and buy it and put it in your own collection. But thanks for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Good night.